Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Packers Unscripted from Packers.com. I am Mike Spofford, joined, as always, by the one and only Weston Hodkowitz. We're coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field. Wes, it's almost here.
Almost.
Packers, Bears, Week 1 at Soldier Field in Chicago. Kickoff will be 3:25 p.m. on Sunday afternoon Central Time. And normally, when we get to this part of the week and it's Week 1 heading into the season opener, you like to talk about how healthy the team is and how, everybody got through training camp in great shape. And well, that's not the case for the Green Bay Packers at one position in particular. And of course, I'm talking about wide receiver, because at the time that we are taping this, which is Thursday morning, at Wednesday's practice, both Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs were out with hamstring injuries. Dontavian Wicks, the rookie fifth-round pick who had missed the back half of training camp with a hamstring injury, he's still on the injury report with that injury, but he was back practicing on a limited basis. But regardless, what the Packers receiving core is going to look like on Sunday afternoon in Chicago is a bit of a question mark right now.
It is, Michael, and obviously that was a surprise for a lot of folks. When we go out to practice, you know that Romeo Doubs has been missing some time with the hamstring, and then you group Watson into that conversation as well. The thing selfishly for them, even let's say they'd be able to play on Sunday, I just hate that both of those guys who had such good off seasons had put their best foot forward. I think Romeo has been such a consistent presence. You've certainly seen the dynamic deep threat that Christian Watson provides. You just wanted to be able to see them get out on the field, full go, 100%. Let's see how this all plays out. And unfortunately, even if they're able to play, they're probably going to be somewhat compromised. But it's a difficult, tricky thing for the Green Bay Packers right now, because you have to navigate what your plan is going to be and how you're going to go about handling it. The one thing, again, this is a very small silver lining, but this was Wednesday's practice. So it tells you that the Green Bay Packers went into Wednesday knowing, okay, Christian Watson's probably not going to go today. For whenever it happened, probably not going to be out there. So the coaching staff at least has been able to adapt to that, make their adjustments, and put together a plan that can win here for Jordan Love and this young offense.
Yeah, and as much as the Packers want to start fast this season, obviously, you want to do everything you can to win the game on Sunday in Chicago. This issue with Watson, they have to be really careful, because we saw what happened last year. He was dealing with a hamstring injury early in the year. Then he got back into action, but then the hamstring cropped up again midway through the game in London, and then he was out again for a while. And then in the second half of his rookie season, we obviously saw what Christian Watson brings to this offense. But because of the on-again, off-again, dealing with the hamstring issue last year, we didn't really see what everybody was hoping to see from Christian Watson until the calendar got much later in the season. So the Packers now have that history. They understand what happened last year. That will all be taken into account in terms of moving forward here. But what this does on Sunday in Chicago is creates an even brighter spotlight than was already going to be on two rookies that we knew were going to be significant parts of this Packers offense with Jordan Love at quarterback. And I'm talking about the 2 second-round picks, Jaden Reed at wide receiver, more so slot receiver most likely, but then also Luke Musgrave at tight end. If each of those guys was expecting maybe 4 or 5 targets from Jordan Love in this game, maybe double that heading into Sunday, we'll just have to see.
And the creativity that the Packers coaching staff is going to have to come up with. It isn't, when you say targets, it's not just pass targets, right? It's
right.
End arounds, it's push passes, it's other things that they can do with this offense. How much pony are we going to see with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon out of the backfield too? What I like about it, though, is both Reed and Musgrave were thrown into the deep end right off the bat. These aren't guys that just sort of crept up and kind of got their way into the starting lineup like a Malik Heath did during the last week of training camp. No. For the most part, they've been running with the ones since day one of the offseason program. They understood what was going to be asked of them. The thing I'm really excited to watch this season, looking specifically at Luke Musgrave, is the tight end in this offense in the Jordan Love era. Very, very small sample size with Jordan Love so far. But he has a knack for finding his tight ends. He had a little bit of a rapport going on with Josiah DeGuara before in the past we've seen. Musgrave gets 5 receptions during the preseason during his limited amount of work. that the tight end is going to be a focal point of the passing game here. And I think having two guys with Reed and Musgrave that can attack the middle of the field, especially when you get Dobbs and Watson out there, it can be a real catalyst for this unit, because you saw the stretch plays. You saw the 19-yard touchdown in the preseason, coming on the crosser like Jaden Reed did. They're going to challenge the eyes and the integrity of opposing secondaries, and watching those two guys work off of each other, I think is going to be really exciting here this first season.
Yeah, you mentioned the 5 reception Musgrave had in the preseason. He was also targeted on some other passes as well. We saw Jordan Love certainly looking to him when he was in there in the preseason games. If Watson and or Dobbs cannot go in this game, you're looking at a bigger opportunity for Samori Toure, who suddenly, he could be the most experienced wide receiver the Packers have on the field on Sunday. Malik Heath, the undrafted rookie from Mississippi, throw him in there as well. And we'll see what happens with Dontavian Wicks. He is at least practicing on a limited basis. And he was running with the ones in training camp at times before the hamstring injury cropped up with him. But what was interesting to me in going through kind of all the notes and the interviews and everything that was going on in the locker room after practice on Wednesday, and then I wrote a story on our website, kind of outlining what's going on at the receiver position, is, big crowd gathers around Samori Toure, a bunch of cameras, and the questions are firing. And we've talked about, the poise, the, calm, cool, collected Jordan Love. Samori Toure did not look bothered in one bit by all this attention that was coming his way and what might be a big opportunity for him on Sunday. To me, he looks like a young man who has a lot more experience than he actually got as a rookie last year. He looks like he's ready for whatever comes his way on Sunday.
I think people forget that this guy was right along with Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs in the journey of development last year. Now, he didn't get as many in-game opportunities as his two, draft classmates, but he's seen some stuff over his time, and he was a seasoned college athlete. I mean, you look at his time at Montana, he was the go-to guy. And then he ends up at Nebraska. A lot of people wondering, okay, can this FCS kid do anything here? He ends up being their leading receiver. I wrote in the offseason, I know you and I have talked about it too, he has succeeded at every level of football he's played, regardless of what people have thought about it. But what you were over in the Malik Heath huddle too, what stands out to me the most, and it goes back to something Samori said when I asked him about the collective, group and how they've kind of grown together here, is whatever the outside perception is of their inexperience, there isn't that expectation in the room. They look at, maybe it's because they all were pretty much star college focal points for their respective teams.
Yeah, they've been the guy. Just not at this level.
You think Malik Heath is getting nervous about having to play on Sunday? I mean, listen to Malik Heath talk. I mean, this is a guy that has done it at every level, 4-star recruit. Was at Mississippi, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. He's ready for it. You remember talking to him during the final week of camp, saying he's talked to Elton Jenkins and Preston Smith about, coming to this league and what it takes to succeed. All these guys are ready for it. The biggest challenge is going to be what they're seeing lined up across from them when you see, Johnson and these other defensive backs and Eddie Jackson hovering over the back end.
Yeah.
That's going to be the challenge, winning those opportunities. But in terms of that atmosphere at Chicago, inside Soldier Field, I don't think these guys are wavering at all.
Yeah, when I think back to Samori Toure's rookie season, I think of two plays. I think of that touchdown catch in Buffalo, which actually occurred right in the end zone that was in front of us.
The one we get to see.
Yeah, where the press box was in Buffalo. That was right below us there. And then the fourth down catch in Detroit. Yep. That kept the Packers, alive for what they were hoping was going to be a game-winning scoring drive there at the end. He didn't have many, but he had some big moments as a rookie, and I think he's a young man who will step up to the challenge. I want to get to our keys to victory, as we like to do at the end of the week, but first a little bit of sponsor business. Sirius XM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7, 365. And at Cousin Subs, we have something for everyone, like our Wisconsin cheese curds, mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousin Subs, 50 years of better.
I'm going to break down the fourth wall really quickly here. I'm going to welcome people into our world. On Fridays, occasionally, we get free lunches. It's a real big boom, for me.
Yeah.
When I worked at the newspaper, I used to get pizza on election night. But it's neat. On Fridays, we get free lunches every once in a while. Mike, you've worked here now for 15 years. Has there been a greater
17
addition?
Actually, but who's counting?
Who's counting, right?
Yeah.
I think in pension terms, it's like, well, as long as you hit the pension, you're good to go.
As long as you get to 15 years, we're good, right?
But in all your time working here, has there been a better addition to the Friday lunch schedule than Cousin Subs?
Hey, I'll take it any time.
For
they
real,
can come. They don't just have to come on Fridays. They can come any day of the week.
Any day they want.
You ask me.
And again, this is not on the script. I just want to say this. I want to give them credit because there's so many sub places that cater, and they're just like, oh, let's put all these subs together. They just shove them out the door. Best catered sub on the planet. And the best part, they put the condiments on the side.
Yeah, I know.
They put the condiments on the side.
I know.
Mike.
That's huge. That's huge for you, Wes. You like to take care of that yourself.
Do you like to eat a sandwich that's been sitting in mayo for 2.5 days?
No. I would agree.
Can you tell I'm ready for week 1?
Yeah.
Let's talk to Keys Victory.
All right, keys to victory, young man. I'll let you decide where you want to start. If you want to start on the offensive side or the defensive side for the Packers, what is forefront in your mind as a key to victory for the Packers on Sunday afternoon?
Defense. It really is. I mean, you go back to the first game of Matt LaFleur's time here, and he always talks about how this season kind of reminds him of that. Well, how did that season start? It didn't start with Aaron Rodgers throwing for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns.
Right.
It was a knockdown, drag-out war at Soldier Field between those two teams. And that's what I think it's ultimately going to take. Packers certainly want to score more than 10 points. But I think it's going to come down to this scheme, this defense, and neutralizing Justin Fields the best that they may. Packers have actually had quite a bit of success against Fields. Joe Barry's had some really smart game plans for how they've defended him. But you know that Luke Getsy and the coaches over on Chicago's side, they're looking at Justin Fields now, year 3. What can we do with this kid that we couldn't do 365 days ago? What areas of his game has he grown in that we can make him a viable threat against this defense? Certainly, rushing to contain, I think, is such an integral part of this. You can't get greedy. You can't get out of your gaps because the thing is the kid's not just fast, he's explosive too. He's not easy to take down.
Yeah.
That's going to be the ultimate challenge for Green Bay.
Yeah, to me this as a week 1 game, and with everything that's been discussed with regards to the Packers defense, this sets up as a really interesting challenge because we've heard so much, we've talked so much about the Packers defense having a more aggressive mentality, right? That's what we've heard from the players. That's what we've heard from Joe Barry. But yet in this one is that going against a quarterback like Justin Fields, this is, if I can still call somebody like this a non-traditional quarterback in the NFL.
When you rush for 1,000 yards in the NFL,
exactly,
you're a
1,100 yard rusher for a quarterback. That's still non-traditional. That's unusual. This isn't about aggression. This is about discipline. This game is going to be about the discipline of the rush lanes, being able to contain him in the pocket. I mean, just look at the game last year, and it was in December. It was when Justin Fields was starting, even though the Bears weren't getting wins. You look at Justin Fields' statistics. Statistically, the second half of last year, he was way better than he was in the first half. Things were starting to come around for him and Luke Getsy's offense and all this. What happened early in the game? He gets loose for a 50-plus yard touchdown run. Later in the game, when the Packers made him throw the football, he threw 2 interceptions in the fourth quarter. And I'm not saying Justin Fields isn't better or things aren't going to change, but that was just last December. You go into this game, that's the formula for beating these guys. You at least have to make Justin Fields prove that he can beat you with his arm before you let him beat you with his legs. And in order to do that, it's all about discipline. The guys up front, whether it's Preston Smith, Kenny Clark, Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness, whoever it is, they can't be worried about how many sacks they're going to be talking about with reporters like after the game. Yep. What they have to be concerned about is how many rushing yards are they going to be talking about that Justin Fields ends up with in this game, because I think that's the entire key for Chicago to get a win.
Yeah, and if you think of the preseason, Mike, obviously you ever take all of it with a grain of salt, but think about the steady pass rush that the Packers ended up having throughout the preseason, right? They had some pretty good pressure on the opposing quarterback. I think they might have had 2 sacks. I think Kingsley Enabare's 2 sacks in that one game were all they had for the. But
yeah.
Brenton Cox made this roster based on how he pressured the quarterback, how he collapsed the pocket. That's the big one here. there's going to be opportunities to get sacks. There's going to be opportunities to make your money. Absolutely. But this is one of those where it takes a group, absolutely team-oriented thought process in order to succeed against a dangerous quarterback like this. Because honestly, Mike, line up the rest of it. I don't know how they'll defend Chicago, but DJ Moore, really super talented receiver, legitimate number one, lined up against Jair Alexander. I feel okay about that, right? Chase Claypool lined up against Rasul Douglas. You feel fine about it. Darnell Mooney, big matchup inside against Keyshawn Nixon. Yep. Devondre Campbell going up against Cole Kmet. There's a lot to like in terms of how Green Bay matches up defensively.
I agree.
But where is the question mark? It's at that quarterback position. It's the one that is normally not accounted for. Are you spying him? Are you watching your edges? What is the plan? The Packers have a plan. Very curious to see how they can go about executing it.
Yeah, and the other key defensively in this game for the Packers, and it's always the biggest wild card in week one for any defense, right, is tackling. Yep. And it's not just about tackling Justin Fields when he decides to take off and run and all that kind of stuff, but this Bears offense, they like to throw the ball horizontally. They like to do bubble screens. They like to throw traditional screens. They like to throw the checkdowns to the running backs. Those guys who get the ball in some open space, the Packers have to be able to make the tackle. Don't let missed tackles then rupture into the big plays, because that's what the Bears are counting on. That's the Chicago Bears' biggest highlight from the preseason was a bubble screen that DJ Moore took 80 yards or whatever to the house, right? You have to be able to make tackles on these guys because they are counting on their short, simple plays at some point rupturing into a big one that's going to shift the momentum and get things on their side. And tackling is a huge wild card in week one. Now the Packers obviously, played their starters at least a few series here and there in the preseason. So they're going into this week one a little bit differently than they have in previous ones, but still 60, 70, 75 plays, whatever it's going to be. First game of the season, all the tackles that have to be made. You never quite know what what you have defensively until you're forced to make those plays.
When you said all those words there, when you talked about the screens, that S word, I thought of a different S word, space.
Yeah.
It's all about space. And Luke Getsy is a disciple of both Mike McCarthy and Matt LaFleur. He had a taste of both worlds. And I think what you've seen with him is understanding who his quarterback is. That's obviously the starting point, but where you build out the offense from the rest of it. There are a lot of parallels. It's a much different offense than what Green Bay runs, but the overall simplification, if you bring it all down to it, it comes down to making guys get the ball in their hands and allow them to make plays. I think that's why DJ Moore is so excited about this opportunity. It's going to put him in a position to make plays. Chase Claypool did not get off to a strong start last year. Seeing how he rebounds from that. Darnell Mooney took a step back last year from his breakout year the year before. Seeing how he responds to that as well. And Juice Herbert now being the featured guy in the backfield with no more David Montgomery.
Right.
Even though they were without him several times because of injuries, still, he's the guy back there now. What does he do with that opportunity? I just feel like for as much expectation as there is on this Bears team, because honestly, you've got to get off the basement floor with that fan base, there still are a lot of question marks in how it all ultimately comes together. But those type of playmakers, that type of athleticism, you get them open in space. It's easy for us to say, go tackle them, but it's not always that simple. That's why hats to the ball matter, and that's why integrity matters.
Yeah, and you said it, hats to the ball, because it can't just be on one guy to have to make those tackles all the time. It has to be multiple guys getting to the ball so that if a tackle is slipped, there's somebody right there to help clean it up. That's what good defenses do, and that's what we saw the Packers working on, the way they ran drills, the way they did things in warm-ups and everything else throughout throughout training camp and the preseason. That's how they did things. So now it has to translate into this game in week one. On the offensive side for Green Bay, we talked about the injuries, the uncertainty at wide receiver. It certainly shifts the focus, perhaps even more so than it would have been already, on how the Packers are going to be able to run the football with Aaron Jones, with A.J. Dillon. You've said it before yourself. Those two running backs can be a new quarterback's best friend, right? And the Packers like what they have up front with their offensive line. We know that Matt LaFleur likes to do a lot of misdirection in the running game and then run play action off of that misdirection stuff. All those kinds of things. But the only way that stuff works is if you can line up and run the ball consistently and efficiently, because then everything else works off of that. And given the Packers' situation at wide receiver going into this game, perhaps it's even more paramount that this ground game establish what it needs to be.
I'm so excited for this offensive line in this game. Being able to see David Bakhtiari and Elton Jenkins back together. We saw it at the end of last season, but having that unification there, in my opinion, pound for pound, the best left side in the game right now. I'm over the moon about what the possibilities can be. You have to go out and earn it. You have to win. You have to be able to run the ball when they know that you're going to be running the ball. But being dominant in the trenches, I think, is going to be important in this game. Give Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon those opportunities. I thought A.J. Dillon ran the ball really well in the preseason. He even talked about it yesterday in the locker room when we were in there. He probably got more preseason reps this year than he's gotten maybe ever, thinking that 2020 there was no preseason, right? His rookie season, when he might have been more in line for something like that. So he feels like that was actually good to kind of get that wear and tear on him a little bit, and feeling good right now, but being able to at least get some of those bumps in.
Yeah, he ran the ball hard.
But let's be honest, Mike. We can talk misdirection. We can talk concepts. We can talk scheme, whatever you want to do. There's two things that this boils down to for the Packers offense: protecting the football and penalties. Matt LaFleur's teams excel in both areas. When they win football games, they win the turnover margin. They play clean football. Staying out of unfavorable situations, that's going to allow you to keep running the ball, right? Making sure that you don't give up the ball in favorable situations for your defense. Those are all going to be the keys to this thing. And I feel like if Jordan Love in this scheme, they can go in there. This is going to sound really bad, but punting is not always the worst thing. And I just feel like if Green Bay can control the field position, control the pace of this game, they are the more talented team. It's just making sure you eliminate as many mistakes as possible.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the 2019 opener, Matt LaFleur's first game as head coach, that was at Soldier Field and was that defensive slugfest. 10-3 was the final score. The Packers did just fine protecting the football in that game, but that entire game they were behind the sticks offensively. It was whether it was penalties or negative yardage plays or whatever. And that's what you have to stay away from, because they only scored 10 points in that game because of a lot of self-inflicted stuff that just they put themselves in positions that were really, really hard to convert. But the defense held up its end to be able to get that win. So, Matt LaFleur knows all about that experience in a Week 1 game at Soldier Field, and that's what they'll be looking to avoid. For me, I'm curious to see just. You mentioned it earlier, what's known as the pony package, which is when both A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones are on the field together. And with the situation now at wide receiver, what might we see in the creative realm from Matt LaFleur, from offensive coordinator Adam Stenavich, with regard to the running backs and how they're used in this game? I guess color me curious as to maybe what might be, pulled out of that grab bag as they get ready to play on Sunday, just in case they need something for a little changeup or something for a little spark or whatever offensively. If there is something like that they're going to go to, I think it's going to involve one of the running backs.
Do you see what Atlanta's doing what they're doing this year?
No.
So they're calling Cordarrelle Patterson a joker now. And Bijan Robinson's the starting running back.
Okay.
But they're it's almost kind of a takeoff pony a little bit, but using it more as like the base personnel on a depth chart, so to speak. I feel like that's one of the things that Green Bay really can do. I want to see more of this year is let's get as creative as possible with Aaron Jones. Let's get him catching passes. Let's get him out of the backfield. Let's get him on bubble screens. Let's do all that stuff and have A.J. Dillon as your prototypical starting running back.
Sure.
I'm really excited to see what those two guys can do off each other. There's going to be some pre-snap action motion, with Reed or with Jones, and being able just to challenge the eyes of a defense, I think is going to be really important, because ultimately that's what it comes down to. Yes, you want to get your best 11 players on the field, but it's how can we use 208-pound, 5'9" Aaron Jones and 247-pound A.J. Dillon. How can we use this to kind of confuse a defense and give them multiple looks and not sure what they're going to see on any given play? That's what I think ultimately can be the biggest thing, because whether or not Dobbs and Watson played in this game, it still comes back to your veteran leadership. And the big thing I've been hitting on, Mike, day after day, you're probably getting sick of me saying it, is the Packers have veteran experience where they need it most, in the backfield and on the offensive line. And I'm really excited to see what they can do with it. I feel like this could really be a creme de la creme type season for Aaron Jones. Just if he stays healthy, just open the box of tricks.
Yeah, and I did a little bit of research in the offseason, and if I'm remembering my own statistics right, I believe it's only been 5 or 6 times in the Packers' last 30-some games that Bakhtiari and Jenkins have lined up side by side, like just a half dozen times basically out of the last 2 seasons, like 33, 34 games, whatever it's been. And the fact that week 1, that's what we're going to see, and you hope that you're going to see that on a weekly basis. That's going to be big for this offense.
Tip of the cap to Aaron Rodgers and Christian Watson and all the guys at the end of last season, but I don't think it's a coincidence that that's how Green Bay got on the run late in the season, that Bakhtiari and Jenkins were mostly solidified in those 2 spots.
Yeah, all right, well, with that, we will call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted. Be sure to follow all of our coverage of the team and all of our coverage of Sunday's Week 1 season opener from Chicago. We will have it all for you on Packers.com. For Wes, I am Mike. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We will see you next time.